Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending Project Management from a Woman's Perspective, presented as part of the LEDucation 2020 virtual seminar series. We'd like to thank the Designers Lighting Forum of New York for giving us the opportunity to present on this important topic. This course is registered with the American Institute of Architects for continuing professional education. Through this course, attendees will learn the various stages of a project and how to successfully navigate project management, be able to identify potential conflicts typical of project management and how to sidestep them, learn how to improve their communication skills with cross-functional teams, and learn skills to strengthen their authority and value in their field. Project Management from a Woman's Perspective was developed as part of the Women in Lighting and Design's Education Outreach Program, helping to bring attention to the struggles and successes of women, those that identify as female, and their allies. We are a feminist organization believing in the equality of the sexes and strive to promote and encourage this in the lighting industry. If you'd like to know more about our organization, we encourage you to check out our website at womeninlightingdesign.wordpress.com and click the links to sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. I'd like to thank our three panelists, Shayna, Andrea, and Bob, for agreeing to be part of the discussion today. I'm Kelly Roberts, and I will be moderating. Shayna Bramley is a senior associate at Stantec Consulting in their Northern New Jersey office. She manages a team of lighting and electrical engineers focused on the transportation sector. Recent projects she has worked on include JFK Airport, Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Turnpike, and Albany Skyway. Shayna has a master's in architectural engineering from Penn State, an MBA from University of Florida, and holds several professional credentials, including PE, LC, CEM, CBCP, and LEED. Over the past 24 years in the industry, Shayna has worked as an electrical engineer, lighting designer, lighting sales rep, and educator. She has volunteered her time as a former AGI 32 certified instructor, LC exam item writer, and has authored over 50 AIA CEU courses throughout her career. Andrea Hartranft, FIALD of Hartranft Lighting Design, offers expertise gained from more than 2,500 commercial, institutional, and industrial projects, including high-end public spaces, energy-efficient workplaces, and cost-driven renovations. Her projects have received international lighting design awards from the IALD and the IES, as well as AIA awards at the regional and national level. She currently serves on the IALD Board of Directors and is a past president of the IALD Education Trust. Andrea has provided presentations on lighting for Enlighten Americas Europe and Asia, and was a workshop head for lights in Linksys 2015 and Lucien Riviera 2017. Andrea also developed and taught lighting fundamentals and advanced lighting design courses at the Corcoran College of Art and Design from 2006 until 2013. Bob Bazan joined Chelsea Lighting in 2016 and serves as Senior Vice President responsible for the Project Management, Lighting, Controls, and Logistics Group. Bob has worked in lighting manufacturing for Cooper Lighting, WSC Lighting, and Apogee Translight, responsible for engineering, product development, sales, and marketing. Prior to that, Bob worked in printed circuit board manufacturing at Photo Circuits Corporation, serving as Vice President of Customer Support and on the restructuring committee for the company's reorganization operations. Bob is a retired Navy captain with 30 years of military service and has made many deployments throughout the world, including combat operations in Afghanistan, the Korean Theater of Operations, and emergency management operations with FEMA and New York State. He holds a BS in engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy, an MBA from the University of Rhode Island, and joint professional military certification from the Air Command and Staff College. My name is Kelly Roberts, and I will be serving as moderator today. I joined the architectural community from a background in theatrical, scenic, and lighting design. I have experience with a wide range of projects across the United States and overseas, including high-end residential, upscale retail, and boutique hospitality. As studio director at WALD Studio, I am responsible for managing the firm's workflow and production work, including drawings, specifications, controls, photometric analysis, and energy code compliance. Outside of the office, I am a leader in the New York City and national groups of Women in Lighting and Design. I'm a member of the Illuminating Engineering Society, Designers Lighting Forum, and a lead BD&C professional. So, what is project management? Why are we talking about this today? Project management requires the ability to deliver projects on schedule, on budget, and aligned with business goals. For most of us in the lighting industry, our assignments will be focused on the completion of an architectural project, whether it's providing the design, selling the fixtures, or thinking up the next great lighting technological innovation. Today, we'll discuss our unique experiences, from finding a seat at the table with architects, engineers, and developers, to maneuvering the construction site with contractors and distributors. We'll explore how to build a powerhouse team, how to avoid pitfalls, and how to strengthen your voice as a woman from any field in the design and construction industry. The project manager is accountable for the success or failure of a project, and having the right knowledge, the right team to lead, and the right support from your employer can make all the difference. A woman's perspective on project management highlights the stereotypes often associated between genders and the unconscious bias found in the workplace. Maybe you've heard some of these stereotypes. Women are too accommodating, men are more aggressive go-getters. Women are less focused on their careers and more focused on family. Men are more analytical and capable of making more important decisions. These may seem outdated, but society is still focused on separating pink from blue in childhood, and this resonates in workplace culture and attitudes. Today, we are bringing to the table 3 panelists that fight these stereotypes daily, building successful careers and encouraging their teams to push boundaries while providing an excellent service to their clients. We'll break up today's discussion into 2 categories. First, tackling inter-office relationships and management of employees. And second, we'll delve into management out of the office, working with clients and other firms. Shayna, I'll direct the first question to you. We've touched on what project management is as a general practice, but when you're starting a project, what are the first steps you take to establish your role as a leader?
Thanks, Kelly. As a manager, I currently work with a team of 16 electrical engineers and lighting designers, and there's a phrase that I tend to use over and over. It's setting expectations, and every issue or problem that we face on a project can be oversimplified into a lack of clear expectations between 2 people. And as a female manager, I feel it's important that we set clear expectations with our team on what we expect from them on projects, as well as how they can expect to work with me as their manager. As women, we tend to, and I hate to use the phrase talk more, but we do. We tend to go into more detailed description than our male counterparts up front and on projects, which can actually be very beneficial, I feel, in the long run. For example, when working on a project, it's common for managers to say, I need you to design these electrical plans ASAP for a Friday submission. But there's so much detail lacking in that initial request. A better tactic I prefer is using that old school, who, what, where, when, and why questions. It's so important to set clear expectations right from the beginning. So who, take a few minutes, let them know who the other team members are, who is responsible for what task. And if they have a technical question, who do you recommend them to turn to for each topic? From what, take a few minutes to explain what the project is as a whole. As a manager, we've been in meetings and conversations since the inception of the project and from a few months ago, but our team members don't have that same level of background. So we need to set that stage for them. Take a few minutes to let them know where to find background files and client-specific design manuals. When, to me, this is the most important item. When project managing and being overly, talkative, it's important that we set those clear boundaries. Let them know what date you need something by. Let them know how many hours you anticipate the work to take. Ask them for their feedback. Do these hours seem right? Does this time frame work with your schedule? Are there any obstacles, like other projects, that will prevent you from meeting this deadline? If so, they need to speak now. And the why is, make your team members feel part of the big picture. Give them a stake in the game. Let them know that this is their opportunity to demonstrate certain skills, which will lead to then future responsibilities. If you get this done in 40 hours, we'll meet our budget and likely get more work from the client that can bring, that they could maybe begin to manage in the future. So setting clear expectations and over talking as a female manager can actually be very beneficial.
So taking just one of those, let's start with the who. Bob, how do you tend to build your office team? Like, what specific traits are you looking for in determining some of these responsibilities for these milestones that you would set for a project?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So when we first kick off a project, we actually do a full transition from our estimating group to our project management group. And that is typically a 1 to 2 hour session where we really go through the details of the project. And I'm always looking for my project managers to really take the lead at that point, at that really transition point. And the two key aspects and attributes I want to see is the technical competence. Are they digging in, understanding the nuances, the architectural drawings, the electrical drawings, asking questions of the salesperson and the estimator that have probably been involved in that project for many months and have had a lot of communications with the design team or the contracting team, and to make sure that project manager specifically asks the right questions and gets those details up front to kind of kick the job off. And then the second part, besides the kind of the technical competence, really is, do you have the fire in the belly? And by the fire in the belly, I mean, are you really digging in? Are you asking questions? Do you understand the schedule? Do you have a copy of the schedule? Who's on your team? Are your team members, whether you have a project engineer or project coordinator or assistant project manager, are they involved? Are they asking questions? Do they have that same fire in the belly to really make the job happen, get it done, keep track of the tracking charts, your status reports, whatever tools you're using to manage the project? Are they reviewing those, and is the project manager reviewing them on a weekly basis? And of course, it's really up to the project exec or that person's supervisor to keep an eye on them to make sure they're meeting their tasks.
Thank you. How big is your office or the team that you tend to lead?
Yeah, so at Chelsea, we have about 25 project managers, and each of them have a team of anywhere from 2 to 4 people, typically. And they're generally running anywhere from 10 to 20 projects simultaneously, all in different parts of the process. It could be right at the beginning, just transitioning and going through the submittal phase. It could be through releases and communicating with factories to get deliveries and schedule, shipments, right through the punch list. And a lot of times the punch list, as we all know, can take a lot of time to really clear up all those little nuances of really the integration of the lighting and the controls. And that kind of gets back to that technical competence I was talking about. That this business has become far more technical than it used to be years ago. In the days of fluorescent incandescent, it was pretty simple. Not a lot of complicated things you had to worry about. Today, LED makes things very complicated. We have complicated just manufacturers and the way the factories are building their fixtures today, to the integration controls. And those controls integrations through IoT, and now as we move into PoE as our next leap into technology, just a lot of those details, you really need a project manager that understands those and can put those things together. Thanks,
Bob. Andrea, can you actually tell us how big your office is and just give us a little insight into your design firm as well?
Thank you, Kelly. Hi. We are significantly different in size, I believe, and in kind of approach. We're 9. Our team, everybody understands that because we are not a 100-person firm, everybody is hands-on and hands-in. So, our youngest, least experienced people are actually bringing in work. Everybody is sort of, like I said, hands in to grow the firm and to be part of the firm. And when it comes to projects and project management, The other thing about our firm to understand is we're a distributed business model. So we don't have brick and mortar. We operate out of our homes or wherever we are, which often is all over the place. Not right now, but before. And we don't have set teams. We have more experienced people and people who are learning, and typically they're paired together on projects to where their abilities fit to meet the needs of the specific project. Everybody has access to the proposals and are encouraged to review the proposal before even starting the project. We use tools that allow for integration of emails and awareness of everything that's gone on the project prior to being brought onto the team. But typically, our designers are all involved in the project from the get-go, and we try not to have conversations apart from the team. When I sit on a kickoff call or one of the other more experienced team members sit on a kickoff call, there's usually their team with them on that call so that information doesn't get dropped. I would much rather have a couple of people on the call taking notes and use that fee up front to make sure that there isn't any miscommunication. So we definitely have a different approach, I think, than a much larger firm would, and a more like all in one place kind of firm would, because we're constantly having to shift gears all over the place to serve the needs of our clients. But that's how we're set up.
So it's interesting mentioning that you're that you have a remote structure, and we're obviously in a unique position right now when we're recording this in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, where most of us are working remotely. I'll start with you because you were just speaking about your experience, but then I would like to hear from both Shayna and Bob. But how has your experience changed much since you already had a remote structure, now that everyone else is also working remotely?
Well, I'd love to say that we were ahead of the curve on that. Obviously, we didn't see the curve coming, but it did make it easier to be up and running. It helped us solidify our communication skills. We do a lot more by GoTo and Slack now. Slack we were behind on that. We had not been using Slack. Now almost every project discussion is done with a Slack call, which has been fantastic for us because we can share and write all over stuff, and that's been great. But it hasn't been a huge transition. The one thing I'd say, Bob, you were talking about what you look for in team members and how they approach things. And I use two words, risk taker and humility. And I find that has been extremely helpful in the development of my team, especially going into this, because they are kind of on their own. We all communicate pretty much daily, one way or another, but they have to be able to manage themselves and be independent, and that those two key terms for me have really provided me with a team that I can trust, and I can step back and do my job without feeling like I have to be constantly managing.
So Bob, actually, when we were originally discussing this remote versus not remote office, you were very much, no, it doesn't work, at least not for us. So I'm curious how your experience has been now, and what you might do differently, coming away from this. Is there anything that you would change when you eventually are able to go back to the office?
Yeah, this is very interesting, Kelly. So, my background has been primarily manufacturing, and then more recently in distribution. So I've always been either in a factory or in an office, and used to being around my team and getting on the factory floor. So my construct has always been, you got to go somewhere to get the job done. So really, as of March, that construct completely changed, and we had to go to, obviously like everyone else, complete remote office environment. And I certainly had a lot of reservations about that. But we really quickly went to remote kind of integrated settings literally within a day. So amazing that everyone was able to pretty much take their equipment that they needed from the office on a Friday. And on Monday morning, they were set up at home, working remote with all the collaborative tools that they needed. So my perspective has changed dramatically. So I was very apprehensive that we were not going to be able to function as a project management group to effectively meet our customers' needs. And I've been completely proven wrong. So we've been able to do that. I would say we're probably about 80% effective overall. I'd say the one concern and the one challenge we still have is the ability to train new employees. So, it's fine. We've got a pretty seasoned project management team. So these folks have been doing it for quite a few years. So for my key project managers, no problem. They're right off the bat. But for some of our newer hires that literally we just hired the week before COVID-19 hit, it's been a bit of a challenge to train them remotely and just to give them that coaching, mentoring, one-on-one. You can only do so much via Zoom and off Teams and Smartsheet. That's something I think we're still working on, is just how to effectively train remotely for new hires, folks that have been with a firm for, less than a year or less than 6 months.
Interesting. And Shayna, yeah.
I just wanted, actually, you reminded me, Bob, the one thing that's come out of this within our team that has been not a surprise because they're awesome, but just an unexpected silver lining is just that all of a sudden, without prompting, folks on the team are saying, hey, this is a thing that we, is worthy of conversation, like things we do to make Revit less of a pain in the neck or whatever. And have been initiating like a Wednesday at lunchtime Slack call, just inter-office Slack call that, everybody jumps on and talks about whatever the topic of the flavor of the week or the month is. And they're doing that. Like, that's not me pushing, that's just happening. It's kind of an organic thing that I have been really thrilled with. And I assume and hope that it will continue past the COVID situation and on forever. But it's been a really nice development.
And Shayna, how has your team been dealing with the situation? You said 16 people that you're leading?
Yeah, so we have, I lead a team from both our Northern New Jersey office as well as the New York City office. And we're traditionally a brick and mortar type of office. In our Northern New Jersey office, we have around 65 to 80 people. And it was definitely a transition to go from that, you're in an office every day, brick and mortar, cubicle, to going remote. And I think there was a lot of hesitation and worry up front. But after the first month, 2 months, but after the first couple of weeks, people realized, oh, this is actually working. It's funny because when you're in the office, people are always running around, and it's hard to find somebody. If you have a question, they may be in a meeting, they may be at somebody else's cubicle. Now everyone's sitting in front of their desk, unfortunately, 8 hours a day, and they're there. So if I need to get somebody, I know they're sitting at their desk. I know they're not running around. So it's been easier to actually communicate and get answers from coworkers, which I think surprised all of us. One, something that Bob mentioned was absolutely, onboarding. We're kind of lucky because at Stantec, we do a lot of internships between our spring, summer, and fall. And a lot of those interns will come back in, full time after they graduate. And that has been a blessing in disguise because, on Monday, I have a new employee starting in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of working from home. But he was with us last fall. He was with us last summer. So it's easy to transition. But for new people, we've been kind of, we want to hire, we have the work, but it's the question of how do we train someone who's brand new and bring them into that culture? And so there's our side of it, but there's also our customer side of it. So we as a company may be transitioning really well and working well remotely. There's even talks of, hey, they sent an email out and said, do you guys like this? Would you like to continue this long term? And we're like, yeah, we love it. I mean, some of us that have 4 kids may have no choice of working from home and homeschooling part-time, but it's actually been very beneficial. But our customers, that's the tough thing. So we do a lot of authority work with like New Jersey Turnpike or DOT work, and we're working remotely. So even though we're okay, we're up and running, sometimes it's just slower to get answers from our customers or our clients, because they're not used to working remotely and they don't do it as well as maybe a private company. And so that has slowed things down on our end from working remotely. Like we're ready, but it's hard to get answers and submitting plans and going through review because their process has slowed down. But and then like Andrea pointed out, with having that camaraderie of a team, we're trying to do more Friday happy hours. And it's like Friday, let's meet and let's just see each other and talk about not work for like half an hour, just to see each other, because you need to keep that interaction and that the fun atmosphere, that non-work relationships that we build. We need to keep those going.
Thanks, Shayna. So it's curious, digging in a little bit more into the way that you're working with your employees and managing your employees. Obviously it's changed now, but did you have any way that you thought was the best that allowed you to manage them well and give them an opportunity to come speak to you and ask questions?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is having that open door policy, and now it's an open Skype or Zoom policy. They feel free, they feel comfortable enough with me as a manager that they can ask those difficult questions. And building, as a manager, I find that it's not only important to teach them the skill set that they need as electrical engineers and lighting designers, but the relationships and the connections that go beyond work are just as important, and getting to know them on a personal level. And so, if we just take a half an hour and I'm in between meetings, I'll just message someone like, hey, you want to chat? Just to get to know them, their family, what's going to help make them successful. Because I want them to be comfortable enough with me that they can say, I'm not sure I can do this project, or I need help, and that they can come to me before it's too late, like the day something's actually due. And I kind of feel like if my employee does not meet a deadline, it's not their fault, it's mine. I want them to let them know that I'll fall on the sword for them and have their back, and that trust and that camaraderie can really go a long way.
Trust and camaraderie, that's actually really important. And so Andrea, I know that that's like a core goal of your company as well. And how do you get employees to value their own work as they are working for you, and acknowledging their future in the organization, making sure that they're managing their time correctly in their projects? How do you get your employees to have a stake in it, as it were?
That's a bunch of questions.
Sorry.
And that's fine. Let's start with the easy one of managing their time. They're all adults, and they're not in front of me. They're in Boston and New York and Charlotte and Atlanta and DC. So the proof is always in the pudding with regard to that. If continuously there's an issue with meeting deadline, I'm with Shayna. It's my problem and it's my fault, and I have to be doing my job better. And that goes to what Bob was saying about, or no, sorry, Bob, it was what Shayna was saying about the when are things due, making sure people know their deadlines. That's pretty key. But with regard to the incentivizing and buy-in, you know, I think it really boils down to people knowing that they're part of a team that respects them, that I have their back at all times. It will always roll down to me. I remember when I worked for Candy Kling, and I worked for her for about 18 years, which were 18 really, really good years. I learned a lot. But there was, when I was just starting with her, a client, she was away, and a client gave me hell on the phone. I mean, they were brutal. And I had really just started working with her. And I could hear her when she got back down the hall in her office, in her wonderful voice, letting them know that they would never do that again. And from that moment on, I knew she had my back. I knew I could trust her, and it made everything I did going forward a whole lot easier. So, you know, I think it's important for team members to know that I respect them, that I value them, that I listen to what they have to say, that I listen to their design ideas. If I don't think it's going to serve the needs of the client, I will let them know. Otherwise, all ideas go into the presentation, and we let the client decide. And I think that's a very healthy thing. You know, my job is part of my job is to make sure that my team members feel like team members, not employees. And I never use that term. I never use staff. I don't like those terms because they are my team and kind of my family. And so I jotted some notes down about that. I have to look down, and I'm sorry about that, but you know, I'm old. Well, I can't even get this technology to work today. The other thing that I do, you know, I make sure they have all their tools, like you had said, Shayna, and Bob. That's really critical. Making sure when this hit, this you know, at work, at home kind of situation hit, I sent everybody a ring light. I'm not using one now. I should be, but I'm downstairs from my office. But it was the first thing because I knew we were going to have to look decent on Zoom calls and go-to calls. But the other thing that I do is I incentivize to bring in work. You get a percentage of revenue brought in from clients that you find and you bring in, and that, you know, it grows my company, and that's good for the health of the company, which is good for everybody that works at the company, and it tells everybody that they, you know, have lots of ways to be valued, not just within the project but outside of the projects, and I found that to be a very good thing. And the other thing is I encourage them to and support membership in things like IES and IALD, and absolutely support going to conferences and going to lighting shows. And I just think those things are critical to encourage learning and encourage networking and all of the other things that make people feel like they're part of a team and valued.
I think the steps that people are taking to have, especially when they're not connecting day to day during this time period, having your Friday happy hours or your, as you said earlier, your midday check-ins where you're sharing stories, that seems to be really important in kind of keeping a collaborative team going. So Bob, if you see somebody who's struggling with any of these sections of the project management, what do you tend to do to help them out? And you can, I'm not being very specific in my question, but you can certainly be specific in your answers. You know, when you want to focus in on one of the jobs that you actually relates to your field.
Sure. So a couple of things. You know, we put in place a few years ago a lot of really key metrics. So, and the metrics are owned by each project manager. So whether it's sales, shipping, deliveries, quality issues, back charges, profitability, change orders. All these things we're tracking them pretty closely now, and we review them on a monthly basis with each project manager to make sure they're on track for the metrics for each project. And what goes with that is a lot of things that we've added, just collaborative tools, Smartsheet. Everything's kind of on Smartsheet now. So anyone on the project team can see it. Anyone in the company can see it. Our owners can see it. I can see where they're at with each project. Where are they, what's the schedule? Are we meeting schedule? Do we have open issues? On the technical side, which is where we tend to, that's really what I believe our strength is, getting the job sites and solving problems. So ultimately where we tend to struggle the most, I would say, is, either factory issues or installation job site issues. That's always the challenge. And really as a distributor, it's our job to bridge those two. One, to help make sure the factory understands the needs, the expectations, the installation requirements, the design intent. And then two, to really help the electricians and the installers with those install details, nuances, run configurations, wiring, daylighting, dimming, all those other things to really get on site. And when we tend to struggle, it's when we get into those more, challenging installation issues, and we just go to site. So ultimately, myself and the project manager will go to the site together, and maybe we'll take one of our techs as well, if it's a controls issue, to really just, one, understand the problem, get it on site, take photographs, get up on a ladder, and help solve the problem. And ultimately, I'll be up on the ladder showing and educating to make sure everyone understands what the problem is and what can we do as a team to solve it. And it really is team. It's having an electrician there. It's having perhaps the factory rep there or a factory person there to really work together to solve it. So really getting those folks together, really getting to site, typically getting on site to solve them is generally what needs to get done to keep that project moving along.
And what I'm hearing and what's key there is that you're involved in that process, and you're, showing that you're there if the project manager needs you, or at least you're there if the client feels like they want to see you there. But it's definitely the team effort, which actually brings me to Shayna. I'm curious. So women leaders can often be categorized as being bossy. And I'm just curious what skills you have developed or can recommend for being assertive and maintaining authority without leaning into that stigma. Maybe.
Yeah, that's there is some underlying assumptions that women who are firm can be bossy. I think it's interesting when we look at just male counterparts sitting at a meeting and a female counterpart sitting at a meeting, and making sure that that they have an equal say at the table when it comes to being a leader and not getting overly emotional. I think is important. I think also over time. So I'm a different manager, engineer than I was 20 years ago. And, as we get older, we get calmer and we get less reactive and we listen more. And I think there's just a growth naturally that will happen. And as, with women having a seat at the table, something that has always helped me was, sounds odd, but, credentials. People, when I sat at the table and I had some letters after my name, they just look at you differently. And that I think has helped allowing my voice to be heard and not coming off as bossy, but I know what I'm talking about. Like, I have a stake in this, and you want to be appreciated. And finding the people to work with that do appreciate you is I mean, it's wonderful.
So moving out of all of our internal offices and moving towards a little bit more external meetings with clients and developers and construction managers, being the only woman in the room during a project meeting is actually still a pretty frequent occurrence. And Andrea, I'm curious what your experience is with that and how you are able to establish yourself in a group of new peers. So building off. Yeah, you have so many stories.
I have so many stories. We don't have enough time for the stories. But Shayna, you're absolutely right. You know, with age and with credential and experience comes a poise and a calmness that when you walk into a room, it does show. And I think understanding that is important. I've always said that, you know, when you come into a project for the first time, into a project meeting, everybody has to pee on everybody else. You know, it's like if you have a dog, you know, when a dog meets another dog, they pee on the same spot like 10 times back and forth to establish that dominance or whatever it is that they feel they need to establish. And then I think that happens in a lot of meetings. And when there's gender imbalance at the meeting, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming or whatever to a younger person who maybe doesn't have quite as much confidence in their knowledge yet, or the credential, or the whatever. And when I was younger and, you know, didn't have quite as much after my name, I found that to be just an interesting study. And I saw the humor in it, so I sat back and I kind of watched the dynamic. But if I needed to say something, I made sure that before I left the room, it got said and it got heard, you know, and establishing that I knew what I was talking about was critical, and doing it quickly was critical, you know, and it's not throwing around a bunch of big words, but it's making eye contact. It's, you know, having confidence in what you say it with authority, and don't let anyone, male or female, it's whatever, talk over you. I mean, you should be afforded the respect to complete a sentence and a thought. And I think that's just the bare minimum of civility in a meeting. And sometimes it gets forgotten, and sometimes you need to puff up your feathers and, you know, do all the things that animals do to remind people that you're still talking and you have something to say and they need to listen to you.
Bob, is there anything that you've found that you can do as you walk into a room, figuring out who the most important person is, but then making it a more inclusive environment for everyone that's there?
Well, yeah, and it's funny. Part of our training at Chelsea, we call it, instead of boot camp, we call it lamp camp. And the first class that I teach is Lighting 101, which is know the food chain. And the food chain in this industry can be pretty complex, particularly for a newer person to understand the nuances. So that when you do walk in the room, you understand who's there, from the owner or the owner's rep that ultimately are paying all of us, to the design team of the architect, the engineer, the lighting designer, to potentially the manufacturer or the manufacturer's rep, and then the entire construction team, construction manager, general contractor, electrical contractor. So you've got a lot of players. So you can walk into a kickoff meeting and there could be 30 people in the room. And that's not even including the other trades. That's just the trades that we get involved in. And you need to understand who's who in the zoo, and understand, it starts with understanding that food chain and where they fit. So really important, and it's the first thing we teach is know the food chain. So when you walk in, you know who you're talking to, you know how they fit into this whole scheme of this business that we operate in. and what type of an influencer they are, because every one of those entities, they do influence, and they influence to different degrees, depending upon whether it's just in the beginning of the process or later on in the process. So from our perspective, at least from distribution, I kind of say that everyone's our customer. Ultimately, everyone is an influencer, and therefore they're a customer in some shape or fashion, and they need to be treated that way, and keep the emotion out of it, treat everyone with dignity and respect, and in turn, you will be treated that way.
All very good points. Shayna, is there anything that you do when you're first preparing for a meeting? New project, initial kickoff?
Something Bob said spurred something in my head. When knowing who's at the table is not only, you know, what they do, but before I go to a meeting with either a new internal team or even a new client, I have to admit, I use social media. I Google the person. I want to find out a little bit about them. Quick story, went to a meeting, let's say, 6 months ago, and there was 25 people in the room. And I happened to know that the person who walked in with the sweatpants was the owner. So the guy, sitting next to me said, "Oh, look at that guy. Who the heck is he?" And I walked over and I said, "Hello, Mr. Owner of this major retail chain." And people were shocked. So taking the time to get to know who you are meeting with, and even like looking into their background, maybe you have something in common with them, you went to the same university, or you worked at the same company, or you both like to garden, or whatever it is. I think that's so important, of walking into a room and already knowing the names of everybody. And so when you introduce yourself, you say, "Hi, hi, Bob." And they're like, "Oh, you already know who I am?" And that gives you a little edge as well of being, I think, a female who's prepared, or any female or male, but just walking into a meeting and being prepared ahead of time and knowing who your audience is will go a long way.
I'm actually curious, since you're saying that as a female, I'm curious, Bob, if you've done similar research, and is that something that you think is helpful, or if you kind of just walk in to a room and hand out your business card and feel like that is sufficient to meet everyone? Just curious what your experience has been.
Well, my experience typically has been to not be as prepared as Shayna just described. But I've got some points here. So I'm taking some notes. I need to do my LinkedIn research before my next meeting.
Social media is king.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's actually, it's very important. I think the more prepared you are, the better you're going to be, particularly in the beginning parts, the early phases of the project. It's putting your best foot forward, knowing those folks. And you're right. I mean, there's some crazy folks that come in unshaven, hair flying, wearing crazy clothes. And that person might be the key to the whole project, or might be the smartest person in the room. And you really want to get to know that person. So yeah, I think it's pretty important to do that. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to point out the differences in the way that you two have had to kind of do the research and to establish yourselves in the meeting. I think it's a key point in the way that women and men may have that different experience in the workplace. Shayna felt like she needs to do that so that she can present herself and that people can trust her, or at least she knows how to put her best foot forward coming from there. And perhaps with Bob and with other men, it feels more natural for them to just walk in and feel like they are comfortable in their space. Yeah. So Andrea, I'd actually love to ask you, if we've talked about now starting the meeting, kickoff, you've never met anyone before, this is what you do. What is your experience with being in a project with people you've already met on other projects before? But let's say you were in a different level previously. how do you reestablish yourself or show that you've, you know, grown in your leadership position? Is there an easier way to kind of show that growth?
You know, I think it shows itself. You just are. The minute you open your mouth in a different leadership role, if you're honest with who you are and how you are, it just shows. You know, I've had different iterations in my life. Before I went to work for Candy, I worked for A&E firms in the role of engineer and lighting designer. When I went to work for Candy, all of a sudden I was a lighting designer. Well, that meant I had to wear, you know, much different clothes because, you know, now I dress in black and stuff. I'm joking, but kind of not, because when I walked in the room as a pure lighting designer, I was looked at differently. The expectations of what I knew and who I was and how I was were different. And I saw that immediately. And that can be beneficial to understand that people's expectations of you as a creative whatever are different than their expectations. This isn't even just a male-female thing. This is just a perception of who you are based on what it says on your card. When I started my firm back in 2013, again, walking into the room now as the business owner, as the principal, has also been different. You know, and now I'm learning to work with my clients to transition other senior team level members to work with them as well and create that trust relationship, so that I don't have to be on, you know, there's some clients, and I'm sure you guys both know that as well, all know that you have to be there. You just do, you know, it's that relationship that you've had through, I mean, I have some clients that I've worked with for over 20 years, and they just expect me to be involved in the project. But as a business owner, you know, I think you can, you know, you can run it or you can do it. And sometimes you have to run the firm, and it's harder to do the design work effectively. And so you know, you just, it's a long answer that probably went way astray from what you asked me in the first place, Kelly, but that's, sorry how I am. You know, back to the original comment, it's just being yourself, and your knowledge and your experience and your comfort and confidence will show through. It really does.
Mm-hmm. I'm open to anyone to answer this. I'm curious what you've seen change in the past years that you've been within the industry in terms of women at the table, women being accepted in meetings, or any sort of, you know, I guess that's all it is, acceptance of women in these meetings. Like, has it changed while you've been in the industry? Or is it still really sad?
I'll go first. So again, I started out on the engineering side, and back in the 80s, and had some very horrible experiences, flat out horrible. You know, I had one firm where one of the engineers would blow cigar smoke through a long tube that drawings used to come rolled up so that they would go right to my station. I had a manager who left a yellowed want ad for a lighting designer on my desk. I had a professor in school who told me that women shouldn't be engineers. I have had the Me Too stuff happen, not a lot. Not sure what that says, but whatever. But it happens, and it all, you know what? It has all informed how I am as a manager. When I switched from engineer to lighting design, I would say it is not the same in the lighting design industry, in the lighting design profession. I think that there is a greater percentage of women-owned businesses and women-led businesses on the design side, not necessarily manufacturer or engineering, but on the pure lighting design side. And I have not in a very long time experienced that. I've found contractors, and we do a lot of work all over the country, are respectful and kind and helpful and take responsibility for making the project as good as it can be. And maybe that's just that I don't take crap anymore, or maybe it is that things are really changing and getting better. I'm not saying they're perfect, and I'm not saying that every now and then I don't find someone or something that ticks me off and I think they really could benefit from some training. I called a lighting rep the other day to apologize for the behavior of another discipline, because I felt it was necessary, because they didn't deserve to be talked to the way that they were. But I think it's a lot better than it was in the 80s, I will say. Absolutely.
I'll second that, Andrea. I do think it's changing, but I do think it's important to know that, with 24, plus years in this industry, it was not always easy. I've gotten a thick skin. I laugh it off now. I think it still happens a little bit, but I laugh it off. But there was the boss who said, you should stay home with your kids, and you're not really smart enough to get a PE. And it was the boss with the Me Too who would sit me down at lunch and tell me explicit things and requests, and it was horrible. It happens. And it's something that I'm scared that my girls will go through the same thing. I'm hoping that, but I will say that the situations that I was presented in, I was lucky enough to, once that situation came around, moved on and said, I'm not going to take this, and and move forward. But they were from more people who are more seasoned in the industry. From a lot of those people have retired since. And so there was a generational aspect to this. I find that the coworkers my age never had anything like that ever happen or spoken to. So I will say that it's changing, it's generational, and it's nice to see the world changing and moving forward. And I hope that my girls will not have to experience this. But it is a question. Do I say don't go into engineering because it's still male dominated? That's a horrible thing for me to even think about. But I do. And knowing that they're going to have to get that thick skin. But I do have belief and faith that it is changing. It really is.
It's reassuring to hear. And I think you should definitely encourage your daughters to go into engineering. We need more of them. And it'll be, the more there are, the easier it'll be. Bob, you shared a story with me actually when we were chatting about a conflict that you helped resolve between one of your employees and someone at a different firm. And I was wondering if you could share that here now too, because I think it's a really important part of this discussion.
Sure. So, at Chelsea, we have quite a few female project managers. They are running teams. They do an excellent job. I actually polled them recently, just kind of one-on-one, to say, how do you feel you are treated and perceived on job sites, particularly on site with the contractors, which 98% of them are men, usually electrical contractors, general contractors, a handful of women, but not too many. And I was pleasantly surprised that all of them came back and said they're treated well, fairly. A couple of them even jokingly said they feel they get treated better than some of their male counterparts and peers, because an old crusty electrical contractor is probably going to yell at a young male distributor a lot more than he will to the female distributor project manager. So that was kind of an interesting feedback. But to this particular story that happened, we spent a lot of time at job sites. We have an expectation to be on site every single week for every single project. And in some projects even require more. So this one particular project manager of mine, we had a requirement for this job that she be on site every single day. That's atypical, but that was a requirement for the schedule. So she really spent, I would say, more than half of her day, every single day on site. And of course, that's a much different construct for most project managers that are typically not on site every day. So she really had to adjust her whole work behavior and how to get the job accomplished. But also the personal interactions with the contractors was significantly different, as opposed to just going to a meeting once a week versus being there, really working with them side by side every single day. And it was probably challenging at first. I would say she tried to be the buddy, be one of the guys, and befriend them in a just be one of the contractors, working with them, going out to happy hours after work, and trying to develop those personal relationships was all very good. Unfortunately, a couple of folks, perceived, her male counterparts perceived that she was more than just being friendly, that there was some romantic involvement that either was going their way or going her way, and texting back and forth and things like that. So became a concern. She was struggling with it for a while, brought it to my attention, really asked for some help of what do I do? How do I get out of this situation? Because she still had to be on site every day and didn't really want to alienate her peers, her coworkers on the contractor side that she still would have to work with every single day without having to kind of spurn their advances, so to speak. So I said, there's only one way to solve this. Let's go to the site. Let's go together. And at one of our meetings, after the meeting, I had a conversation with a couple of the gentlemen to say, just explain the situation, saying it's not comfortable. And we don't want this to be a problem. But you need to understand there's a difference between, the male-female relationships, and she's going out with you guys, and that's great, but that doesn't mean there's a romantic involvement here. So we need to keep things professional. Again, back to the dignity and respect. It goes both ways. So you need to be treating her the same way that she treats you. And we really need to keep all of these relationships at a professional level, not a personal level. So that was a challenge. I think it was a challenge for all of us, a challenge for her to even bring it up, really to confront it, to bring it up to me, and obviously a challenge to have to then confront it on site with some of the folks. But the good news is everyone took it professionally. Everyone understood. Two of the gentlemen apologized profusely, saying, I didn't really understand. I misunderstood. So again, maybe part of the Me Too movement is starting to permeate our society. So I think there's a little more sensitivity that once it was brought up of this is a concern, it was met very professionally and never had a problem again. The job finished fine, and there's been no issue since. So I think you have to bring it up. If there's an issue, don't be afraid to say something. Bring it to your supervisor, and any good supervisor will get involved and help solve the situation.
As all three of you are showing, it's really important to have a very good employer-employee relationship, with trust being the key component of that. Andrea, you had mentioned a story as well, and it can be difficult to stand your ground in the field, as Bob's employer was finding. So she had to come to him for some help. If you're dealing with something like that, or your facts are not being believed, do you have any advice for managing those type of interactions?
Maybe expand the question a little bit. I'm
Sure.
not sure how
So I think you had mentioned the story of, I think, going to the field and taking measurements of some sort.
But this is going back a really, really long time, like 30 years ago. So I was, really just starting out, and I had been in the field and I had seen something that I knew was an anomaly, but I also knew what it was, and I understood it, and I understood why it had been constructed the way that it had been constructed. And I went to my boss and I told him what I had seen. I drew it, and he said, "You're wrong." I said, "I'm not wrong." I said, "That's what I saw. That's what it is." And it was one of those things that was, all you had to do is look at where condo was going and boxes, and you could trace. I mean, there was nothing recessed. It was, I don't even remember what it was. It was a big manufacturing facility. So nothing was hidden. It was, you could look at it and know what you were seeing and know what it was feeding. And he said, you're wrong. They would never build it like that. And I said, "I understand that, but I'm not wrong. They would build it like that." And so he made me get in the car with him, and we went to the job site, and it was correct. I was right. And he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't talk to me the whole way home or back to the office, whatever. And it was uncomfortable. And he was also the one who had put the lighting designer want ad on my desk. So, clearly I was not the person he wanted on his team. And that's fine, because I didn't want to be there at that point either. I knew I wasn't going to get the support, and I wasn't going to, but it taught me that, if somebody perceives something, I need to listen to what they have to say. And we need to get to the bottom of what it is. If it's a project related something, it either is or it isn't. And we work together as an office to solve problems. If it's an issue that is not a project related something, the one thing I've learned is that and this is a little bit of an aside, but that people's feelings are viable. Whether I agree with them or not in their assessment of a situation, their feelings are viable and real, and how they feel about the way something goes down can't be doubted. The something itself can be discussed and possibly, reorganized in their minds, but their feelings are always real and viable. And I think differentiating that and separating that and being respectful to how people feel about what they're saying and what they're feeling helps to deal with issues of doubt on the other end of things. And had he been a little bit more aware of that, we might have had a better situation too.
And it's clear that experience has really shaped how you've become as a manager and, design firm owner, and the way that you interact with your team.
I think so.
Shayna, there's another conflict that I wanted to just question you on was the women, since we are still a minority in project management and leadership positions, and there's still this stereotype that there's only room for one woman to be in the room or at the table. And I'm curious what your experience has been working with other women, and do you find that they are adversaries or allies?
That is a really good question. And my answer will be, and Andrea may attest to this as well, the answer is yes to both, as allies and adversaries. I have experienced both over my career very strongly. I've had some women that want to help bring you up, and then there's been other women who will do everything to bring you down. And and it's recent. It's not just, not just 20 years ago. This is recent, within like the last, previous year. And I find it very sad. I will say that if I had to look at all of the different situations as a whole, I find that the allies are well-educated, confident, and positive people. The people that are just positive and they want to go forward and they just have that outlook in life. And they're confident in not only their skills, but who they are as a person. Like they're sure of themselves and they're confident, and I really look forward to working with other positive women who want to help bring each other up through the ranks. But I've seen my fair share of adversaries, and if I'm looking back, if I could lump them all together, I think the word I would use, unfortunately, is insecure. I find a lot of women are still, I've got the thicker skin now after 20 years. I'm confident and comfortable in my skill set, but there's still a lot of women that aren't after 20 years. And I think this insecurity, they look at other women and maybe they don't have the credentials after their name, or they see your credentials and they immediately don't like you just because you have credentials and they don't. It's all perception. And I have had women who will do everything they can to kind of bring you down to their level so that they can attempt to look good. And I can honestly say that I've left several jobs because of that, which is thickens the skin, where you say, I'm not going to put up with this. Or, it's just, you have to find that situation, that position, that job, where you not only have male counterparts who support you, but also female counterparts. And so I see amazing women on my team, and I've said to them, and several of them know it, I've said to them, I said, I can't wait to see you surpass me and see you the vice president of the company. I can't wait to help you get there. And I think it's important for them to know, I've got your back, I see your potential, and I'm going to help you get there. It's not, and that I see their potentials maybe higher than my potential. I mean, that it's being secure in who I am and where I'm at, and saying, I'm not gonna hold you back. I want to help bring you up. And if like parting words, if you find that position at a company where you have fellow women who really see your value, and male, women and male counterparts who see your value and want to help bring you up, don't take it for granted, because it's not everywhere. But when it does happen, it's a great thing. And that's where we should all be, looking for in our careers, is to find that place.
I just have one last question for all of you to just quickly answer, which is just, what is your favorite part of project management? It could be a really short one thing, or if you'd like to expand on it, you're welcome to. Bob, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm an engineer, so I like solving problems. So project management for me is the ever-changing technology that we're in this business, and the ability to learn new things, even if you've been doing it for 30 years. It's ever-changing. You get to learn new things every day. You get to solve new problems, and you get to meet and interact with a lot of really good people.
Andrea?
I would say, seeing our clients happy, seeing maybe this isn't project management, but it kind of is, seeing, like Shayna was saying, seeing my team grow, seeing, them learning, and just the whole team dynamic, I think, is fantastic. And I'm with you, Bob. I think problem solving is fun. Getting paid is nice. I like that part of it all. That's good.
Shayna?
And you know, I'll second both Bob and Andrea. I'm an engineer and I like solving problems, but project management, I think the beauty in it is the collaboration with all the different type of people. That it keeps it interesting, it keeps it fun. It's you get to work with structural engineers or civil engineers and general contractors and distributors, and you get to work with just a really diverse group of people. And I think that's nice, that there's more than just, you know, sitting at a computer and doing drawings. There's this whole world out there, and collaboration, I think, as a project manager it's nice. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, that concludes our panel discussion on project management from a woman's perspective. I'd like to thank Andrea, Shayna, and Bob for providing insight and expertise on this topic, and thank the LEDucation team for allowing us the chance to discuss these issues within the industry. A woman's place is anywhere she wants to be, and we need more women in managerial roles to help build a more inclusive and creative workplace and inspire the next generation of leaders. Women in Lighting and Design looks forward to continuing this conversation with the lighting community and encouraging them to dig in deep on their own current workplace attitudes and behaviors. Thank you for joining us today.